When you belong to God because you've given your life to Jesus Christ, God works everything out for good. Even when you go through troubles, He doesn't keep you from troubles, but He's at work through the troubles or in the troubles to accomplish His purposes in your life. One day I was traveling from northern British Columbia, where I live, down south to a conference in Seattle, Washington. Well, I arrived in Abbotsford after about an 11-hour journey, and I decided to spend the night with family members. And when I departed the next morning for the last 2.5 hour journey, I began to hear a noise inside. It sounded like in my front wheel. And as I kept going down the highway, before I had entered into the United States, the noise that had started off kind of just soft had become a loud roar, and I knew I had to turn back. I was quite disappointed because the conference was going to begin at 1 o'clock, and I was now approximately, let's say, 9 or 10 in the morning. I turned back to look for a mechanic, and I wondered who is going to help me out at a moment's notice like that. Well, I make it to the conference, and I was quite disappointed. Well, I found a shop by persons with a man's name on it. For example, it might have said Ted's Mechanic Shop. And I'll explain why I'm giving you the name that way now. I asked the fella if he could look at my vehicle, and he said, no problem, he could look at it right now. He had been away on vacation, had just come back, and opened up shop one day earlier than he had expected, and he had no bookings. So I praised God in my heart for that. Well, as Bob, his name was Bob, as he began to look at my car, he opened up the wheel, he took the wheel off, and he found that there were brake calipers binding. So that was wonderful. He was going to fix that, but he checked the other tire, and suddenly he saw there several lug nuts that were holding the tire on halfway unscrewed. And I think it was in the days when you had to take a hubcap off to check the lug nuts. Well, if I wouldn't have had the problem with the calipers, I would have not found the problem with the lug nuts, and perhaps would have had my front wheel spinning off in some direction, causing an accident for others or for myself. So the Lord used this trouble that I had to keep me from having even greater trouble. So I got the calipers fixed, and of course the lug nuts tightened, and I was able to make it to the conference, just missing one small part of the conference that afternoon. Well, there's more to the story. Bob had been sick for quite some time, some years previous to this. And as I chatted with him, I wondered, well, why would you, as Bob, call your name a shop by the name of Ted or something like whatever name that was? And he began to tell me that he had been sick and he'd been very down and out. And a near stranger had helped him out and become established in this shop, and had really helped pull him through a very difficult time in his life. Well, his shop was now established, and in order to honor this near stranger that had helped him out so much, he named his mechanic shop after this fella. Well, needless to say, I saw God's hand at work in both of our lives. I'm not sure if Bob was a believer, and I can't even remember whether I shared the gospel with him, but I knew and saw that the Lord is involved in every detail of our lives. And that reminds me of the scripture in Romans 8:28 that says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and are the called according to his purpose." So you can know that God is at work for good in everything in your life, whether it looks good or not. He's at work for good if you have put your trust in Jesus. Keep trusting in God. May God bless you.